In today's show, Brandon Spargue of 105.1 The Fan in Portland joins the program, and we talk about the Trailblazers showdown with the Clippers on Friday evening and the future of the franchise moving forward. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to a bonus episode of Locked On Blazers. In today's program, Brandon Spargue of 105.1 The Fan in Portland is going to join the show. We're going to talk about Portland showdown, the Trailblazers showdown with the Clippers Friday evening and their path to 8th in the Western Conference. And then the path beyond that, how they move from here, a low-level playoff team, to a potential championship contender, or at least a team that is consistently, chasing home court advantage in the playoffs. We'll get into all of that. If you missed my conversation with Darian Vaziri of Locked On Clippers, that's waiting in your feed before this. Like I said, this is a bonus episode. We're doing a bunch of shows this week. It's a big week in Blazerland and a big night in Blazerland. So if you've missed any shows, go back and check them out, and then come back after the Clippers game, because we'll do another one. It is a whole bonus week here. All right, without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Brandon. Joining me now from 105.1 The Fan in Portland, friend of the program and friend of mine, Brandon Spargue. Brandon, let's talk Friday's basketball game. Give me your confidence level just going in. How do you feel? The Blazers are going to play a game, winner take 8th, against the Clippers at the Moda Center, the most important game in Portland in 5 years. Where are you at?
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be back on the program. You're my third favorite Blazer Locked On host of all time, so I'm honored to be here.
That's fair. I thought Seth did a really good job when he was briefly the host. I thought Seth did a really good job.
Dude, I mean, look, I think the way that they blew the Denver Nugget game and the way that they lost against a, two-guy down Spurs team leaves you a little less excited. But then I think if you look at the other side, you have a Clipper team that at one point since January 1st, they were top 10 in offense and defensive rating. And I don't know what's happened the last couple games, but they have hit the side of the mountain. And what happened yesterday against the Thunder isn't shocking. It's just that, they've had stakes. They've had things to play for, and they've really struggled. So I think given what we saw against them last time in LA and what we have to play for at home, my confidence level out of a 10, I would say I feel like a mighty 6.8. I'm a 6.8 confidence meter there out of 10 because I think they could do it, but the Clippers and Kawhi goes off at any given moment and Ben Mathurin plays well, Clippers can get them. But right now, Clippers are not playing any better than you are.
I agree. I think, I guess let's rewind a little bit. Going into that game in LA, when they were playing the Clippers at the first of these, and they kind of needed to win both to get where you need to go. Were you were, I would imagine, significantly less confident? Have you changed? Things changed since then?
Yeah. I mean, I just tell you straight up on the radio show, I was like, I don't think they're better than the Clippers, and I didn't think that they would win that game. And then I'm watching that, and I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. To dominate the way they did in that game, even when they kind of got cut into their lead, every time it got to it felt like 7, they'd push it back to 16, and so. To see that was pretty jarring, and then you kind of no-showed in the first half of that Pelican game and then the Denver game, and now you have the Spurs. I don't know if I feel a whole lot more confident. I think it's more just about are the others going to show up? Are they going to get more than 5 combined points between Matisse Thybulle and Chris Murray? Is Scoot Henderson going to be 7 of 20 from the field? Is Drew Holiday going to actually play the way he did the first time or the last time that they played the Clippers? So if those things, is Donovan going to get out of his weird funk? I don't even know what this is, but Donovan's been playing kind of bizarrely lately, in my opinion. So if that happens, I know what I'm going to get from 2. It's going to be 16 to 25 points, and he's probably going to be pretty good from 3. I know Denny's going to shoot 15 free throws and make 8 shots, but somehow finish with 33 points. And
true shooting legend, a legend in the true shooting box score.
Absolutely. And so it's not so much more of a confidence boost. It's more just I saw him do it, but I also watched them completely no-show, I thought, last night against the San Antonio Spurs. And so if they can get those other guys to step up, then they'll be all right.
Yeah, the Spurs game was a little bit disheartening. I agree. I thought the Spurs just played with such purpose, and the Blazers didn't feel like they played with a ton of purpose. And Drew wasn't good on offense. And they're right now, the way they're constructed, they're not going to win games if Drew Holiday isn't really good. And whether that's too much on his plate or whatever it might be, but he needs to be the last game going into that game against the Clippers, it was clearly going to be a big Drew game, right? He's going to get a tough defensive assignment and he's going to need to score. I mean, this is why you add Drew Holiday, right? Is because he's the floor raiser and the ceiling raiser in big moments. Like you get him for the playoff games, you get him for this, the championship pedigree Drew Holiday. So I think this is a big one for him, but I'm with you. They need a third guy to have a big night. That's what it is. And I kind of think it's the same for both teams. It's like for the Clippers, I kind of think Kawhi's going to be really good. Darius Garland's going to score 20 one way or another. And then it's like, do they have a third guy? Is that Brook Lopez? Is that Ben Mathurin? Is that, weird Derek Jones night? Whatever it is. Like, do they have a third guy? And I kind of feel the same way about the Blazers. But it might also be like, do they have 2 and 3? Because I'm less confident in 2 and 3 for the Blazers because they don't have that sort of Darius Garland level offensive player. But I guess for like, in terms of just defensively, I think they've been better lately. Are you confident that this defense can make things tough on the Clippers?
I mean, I think they can. We saw it, right? Like the Clipper offense really struggles when they play teams as athletic or size-wise is about a good matchup for them. So I think we just saw them do it. I think it's more about what you're saying. Like, is Kawhi going to go crazy? Is Kawhi going to go for 45? Does Kawhi even care about getting the 8th seed, or does Kawhi just like going to play basketball and tell him he's in the play-in, and then his punishment for the contract stuff is going to pop up in the offseason? I don't know. I think for as many questions there are for the Clippers, there's just as many on our side, right? Like, you're not just playing for the 8th seed here. The reality is you might be playing with Shaedon coming back. We'll see if he gets upgraded to questionable. That's a big thing, right? Are you better served to win this game? And I understand fans don't all like this, but the reality is you win this game, you're going to get probably 2 chances to make the playoffs versus the 1 as a 9 if you lose to Steph Curry and the Warriors. But are you better served future-wise to do that so you don't give up a pick in one of the deepest drafts we've had in a long time, or are you better served to get swept by the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round? So, like,
what do you think? What do you think? What is your opinion there? We've made it here. We've played 80 games heading into game 81. What would you rather see happen for them?
I mean, look, I understand both sides. I really do. I have friends and stuff that, like, a lot of people have checked out on the season in a way that I was a little surprised by because they had taken a step from where they were. But like, I think people are just tired of mediocrity to not very good, and anytime they play a seemingly really good team, they really don't have a chance, or they blow a big lead. So I understand. And the other side of this is like, they haven't been to the playoffs in 4 seasons, going on 5. You like to see them take a playoff step, and there is something to that. And I understand the playoff experience stuff and seeing Denny in the playoffs and Tumani in the playoffs. I get all that. They're not winning a game against the Thunder. They're just not. Like, the Thunder are a wagon. If they do, it's a 5-game series. The reality is, if you don't make it, your pick conveys, and Chicago gets a pick. Mike, you watch college hoops. I'm assuming you know this, like everybody else that's followed it. It's a pretty damn deep draft. Like right now on the mocks, if you used a website like No Ceilings, use those guys. They've got Yaxel, Merez Johnson. They got Koa Pete. Like, those are in the 11 through 14 ranges. If you don't strike gold the way the Mavericks did or the Spurs did with Dylan Harper, that's your range. In a building situation, could you use a player like that that's young, that's coming in? Yaxel's a little older, I understand it, but man, he seems like a pretty damn good player. Like, I don't know. I think I'd rather have that, but if they make the playoffs, you got to be honest about it. I think it's cool they took a step. My minimum requirement for them and expectation was make the play-in. The West in the bottom is going to be really bad. I knew that. And they did that. So I commend them for it. But now that it boils down to this, it's like, do you make the playoffs and get swept? Or do you keep your first round pick in one of the deepest drafts in a long time, knowing next year your pick could convey to Chicago, but who cares? That draft really sucks. So I think you have to balance this from a roster standpoint and a future standpoint. I kind of lean like, yeah, they missed the playoffs. Darn, that's unfortunate. And now they might be in the 11 through 14 range.
Yeah, I think I lean that it's better to go ahead and make the playoffs because of the likelihood that they're going to pick 12 or 13, right? I think right now they would pick, it's something like a 93% chance that they pick 12 or 13. And I I think that generally speaking, that's not a great spot. Obviously, if you knew you were going to win the lottery, if you knew you were going to have a top 4 pick, it's a no-brainer, right? But you don't know that. It's a slim chance, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't really buy the playoff experience thing. I think playoff experience is I think they'll get it when they get it, and it'll be valuable and whatever. I don't think they need to lose 4 times to the Thunder to be like, okay, that's what the intensity looks like. Now we're ready.
Right.
I do think the freeing up your future assets, giving the Bulls the 13th pick in the draft or the 12th pick in the draft this year to free up your assets, considering what all of the other decisions they've made. I didn't like what they did last year. I have no problem with the way they've handled this year at all. But I think there's probably more value in having your own picks to trade, plus the Bucks picks, plus that Magic pick, because you're probably going to try to get good. And that probably means trading players as opposed to adding youngsters. Although I totally accept your logic that like adding a useful 23-year-old who can help is really going to be good for this team because you look at the back half of the rotation now and you're like, well, I don't know if we would need City Sissoko and Chris Murray as part of, that is not part of the future, like in an obvious way. So I think I lean that it's better to make the playoffs, assuming that it frees up your trade assets to make a bigger move that seems to be necessitated by the other choices you've made. But if I don't think it's the end of I think it's fine. I think there's an obvious positive outcome, as you've noted, if they do end up missing the playoffs. So I don't think it's clear cut. I think people want it to be as clear. I think there's a clear positive on both sides. And I think I lean towards it's better for them to make it right now.
Yeah, I find it such an interesting conversation because, whether they make the playoffs or they get a pick this year versus losing it next year. And I totally hear your side of it. But I think what's interesting is like, let's say they make the playoffs, right? And they play the Thunder and they get swept, or they play the Spurs and they get swept. I'm with you of like, I don't think there's any experience to be gained from that. Like, I don't think Scoot Henderson's going to get in that series, shoot 31% and lose in 5 or 4 and go, well, you know what? Now I learned a lot. Now next year, you better watch out. Like, I don't buy that either. I buy it for like ascending teams. I buy it for teams that are truly like on the rise. Like if the Spurs lose in the second round of the Nuggets this year, I'm going to totally buy that experience. That's different, right?
Agreed.
I think the tough thing is like, at least my viewpoint of it is like you have an asset for your bench, which you're severely lacking right now. And then like you'd still have an ability to trade capital that you have with players to go make whatever that, big move or medium-sized move or whatever that move is. But also I can understand the thinking of if it's not like a major ground-shaking player, like let's say, for example, it's Trey Murphy, right? Like let's just throw a name, Trey Murphy. You're going to have to make Trey Murphy trade and something else if you're going to tell me that this team's going in the right direction. Otherwise, it's just a slightly better version of what you are, right? Like, it's tough in the West because of the obvious 2 top teams. But, oh, by the way, the Nuggets are going nowhere. Oh, by the way, LeBron on a cheaper deal are gone, means the Lakers got more money. Oh, by the way, Houston had a down season. They might get better. And Minnesota is kind of weird, too, with their roster. So maybe they make tweaks and they still have Van Edwards. So you're battling 6 teams right now in contention, and it's a tough path either way, but at least not making it this year gives you that ability to capitalize on a deep draft, and then next year if that pick conveys, you don't really miss it because that draft right now, according to everybody, kind of sucks.
Yeah, I kind of think nobody knows with the draft stuff. That's like, I think they can know at the top, like, hey, there's no top end talent, but in terms of like overall talent, it's like, I don't know. You look at the 2013 draft, and that draft was a mess, right? That's Anthony Bennett goes number 1. Giannis went in that draft, right? Giannis went in that draft. Right. It was a good pick. It's a good time to have a draft pick was 2013. So it's like I agree. Even the Jason Tatum 2017 draft, that draft's a mess at the top, but there's a bunch of good players in there. I don't. There's Bam Adebayo and OG Anunoby and Donovan Mitchell in the back half of that lottery. Yeah, like you get
Zach Collins.
Yeah, he it turned out to be a pillar of the franchise. So like, yeah, I think in general, while we probably have a good judge of like top end, like star level talent, I tend to think a year out, people have no idea who are like the solid riser all-star types. So while I do agree that I know nothing, I am still skeptical of the experts.
I totally get that.
I remain skeptical of the experts.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know that there's a difference. I don't know that there's a difference between picking, I don't know, if you're 12 in this draft and 15 in the next one. Like, I don't know. I want to ask sort of other big picture stuff with the Blazers. We will do that in the second segment. Join us on the other side. First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Therapy is an incredibly valuable tool, whether you are dealing with an acute traumatic event or just trying to navigate the daily struggles of being alive in our current era. I like to think of therapy like taking care of your car. Sure, if your car's in an accident, going to the mechanic is valuable, but just taking care of it with routine maintenance keeps that car running better and longer. And that's kind of how therapy works. If you are dealing with an acute trauma, go see a therapist. But if you're just trying to navigate the daily struggles of life, therapy can be incredibly valuable. And BetterHelp is one of the most convenient and affordable ways to start therapy, continue therapy, or find a new therapist if that is something that you need. It helps you work through stress, anxiety, and emotions that you are dealing with in your everyday challenges. And they got over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served. BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are coming up. We are closing into the final weekend of the regular season. That means postseason action is just around the corner, and FanDuel's got you covered for every possession, every matchup, and every game, where the matchups are magnified and every game can swing a series. Heck, every possession even matters when we get to the postseason, and FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. So you can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Plus, the FanDuel app makes it easy to follow the action. They got right there in-app player stats, live play-by-play, matchups, and trends all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight can be really valuable. So if you're looking to make wagers on stars or role players or key moments or series or what have you, it's all there right for you in one place on the FanDuel app. So head over to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel. Play your game. All right, still chatting here with Brandon Spargue, 105.1 The Fan in Portland. Brandon, you said that they met your expectations this year. Do you feel like they exceeded your expectation? Do you feel like the Trailblazers have done better than you think, or have they kind of landed right where you thought? Because I think wins wise, kind of the right spot that I thought they would be. But I guess in general for you, have they exceeded your expectations?
Okay, let's start with the generic thing of like podcasting radio does the cliche, what's the record? What's predict the record thing, right? Like I said 41-41. So this team is exactly where I kind of expected them to be going into the last two games, and they very well could end up being 42-40. So slightly above the expectation. I just knew that they weren't going to be as bad as the Pelicans, Utah, Sacramento. Like, it was obvious. And so for them to be in the spot they're in, there's nothing about them doing it that I'm like, actually, this caught me off guard. Now, I think there's elements of the season that surpassed my expectations. I thought Denny had a much better year than I was expecting. And being an all-star and being close to being all-NBA, and we'll have to wait and see on that one and who's going to be available for that award and who's not. But being that level, even if I don't always, to be honest with you, enjoy watching it be played, the style that it is of like a lot of free throws, it's still like really beneficial to have those players. You're going to be good. You need players like Denny Avdia, Tumani Kamara. Little bit of a slow start the first like 15 or so games, I thought, defensively, but has really come on, and man, he's shooting the lights out right now, and it kind of makes me wonder, what is the ceiling for Tumani Kamara? Does it change at all? Is there any element offensively he can add? I think he could be a little better shooting off the dribble. I don't have those exact numbers from cleaning the glass, but it just feels like he's a little better as a spot up. Like, can he get better off the dribble? I thought Donovan had a overall pretty damn good season. And again, he's trailed off a little bit the last couple, but largely got to be pretty happy with what Donovan Clingan is. I think there are elements of it. I think overall the season's been about what I expected. I think the tough part when you make predictions and whatnot is like, you see maybe what the end result will be, but you don't know how they got to the end result. And so it's like, I think there are things that I can point to that I enjoy. And I think the unfortunate part that I would say is I maybe learned more on the negative side, I think, than even the positive side. Like, I'm happy with the positives of the team. I don't feel like there's a lot of room here for Scoot. It feels like Shaden got a little better, but like largely is still kind of the same natured person. And so maybe that's kind of expendable if you have to make a big move. And the way that we talked about this core and saying like, oh, is it Donovan, Denny, Scoot, Tamani? You know what I mean? I think now that's not like Scoot, Shea, Denny. It's Tamani, Donovan, Denny, and the other two are kind of just there. So I know, long-winded way of like kind of answering the question, but I expected them to be this. I just didn't know how they would end up it. And you just kind of take away from watching like some of the good and some of the bad.
Yeah, I think I generally agree with you because I thought they'd be a really good defensive team. I thought this was going to be like the 8th best defense in the league, and they were going to kind of limp through stuff with this just like horrendous offense, awesome defense. And they haven't really been, they've been really good lately. Since March, they've been a top 5 offense, or excuse me, top 5 defense, and a lot of that is they got to play the Nets a couple times.
But I think that's a tough thing. Not to interrupt you, but like that was the tough thing for me last year. Was like, I thought they, as an organization, I thought they leaned way too heavy on like, oh, look at this small sample size of data, and this is our entire identity, and this is what we are. And I thought Kevin Pelton wrote a really good article of like, some of these shooting splits and some of the numbers for them defensively kind of are like stats that can go to or go for you or go against you, and so that's more of a coin flip than it is like effort. I had noted at the end of the year when you look at their record, dude, the amount of like truly garbage teams they played, and then you're like, wait, we're pointing to the defensive numbers against those teams. Like I didn't really understand it. And so the expectations were like, whoa, the offense, who cares, right? If you're top 5 defensively. And I was like, well, but you have to care about offense. This league, you can have good defense, but like your offense has to be efficient. And I always heard like people were telling me, who cares? And here we are not being a top 10 defensive team most of the season. And guess what? It matters. So I just thought it was kind of an odd thing. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thought it was kind of odd how much they leaned in and act like they had turned some huge corner and they were this or they were that defensively. I just didn't necessarily buy it all the way.
Yeah, I mean, I thought maybe some of it was smoke and mirrors too. I pointed out a bunch that it's like some of their 3-point shooting, particularly opponent 3-point shooting from the corners, was like, okay, well, like this is they're the best. They defend, corner threes better than any team in the league by 2 standard deviations. Like it's just not gonna like. The math's going to come back to you, but I also thought they upgraded their defensive personnel. Like I thought, like you're going to get more Rob Williams, you're going to get more Matisse Thybulle. You didn't. You're going to get a bunch of Drew Holiday. He missed 9 weeks. Like
right.
I thought like in addition to maybe some of that was a little bit of silly season nonsense. They also got better with their defensive personnel. They're going to play more Donovan Clingan and less DeAndre Ayton, and that felt like a reasonable upgrade. So I really felt like even if they were say, hey, they thought they're not a top 5 defense, but they're an above average defense that added a bunch of better defenders. Yeah, I thought this was the 8th best defense in the league. I thought this was like a surefire top defensive unit. Some of that is maybe the coaching change, right? Maybe that Chauncey was better at that side of the ball and getting guys to do what they wanted to do. And maybe some of this is just Denny such a big ask on offense that he's not as good on defense as he was a year ago. And Donovan Clingan playing way more minutes is just like a different level of defender than he was when he was playing, about 50% fewer minutes. So I think some of it is like getting back to like expectations is like, yeah, this wasn't exactly how I thought they were going to bake the cake. But I do, I had on your show, I had them at 39 wins at the beginning of the season, and they're going to win a 40th game. I feel very confident in that. They could win 2 more, but like, so I feel like they kind of hit where I thought they would be. I know that maybe that wasn't the nationally people thought they were going to be worse, but I think locally people understood that sort of the level of competitiveness and that they weren't going to quit. And if you don't quit at any point, you're going to win. Your baseline, if you don't quit, is something like 33 wins in the modern NBA because there's so many bad teams. So like particularly this year. So yeah, I feel like I feel like they met expectations for the most part. And I feel like if they, depending on what happens, like if they beat the Clippers on Friday night and they are the 8th seed in the Western Conference, I don't think I might be able to criticize them big picture stuff and like thinking into the future, but in terms of this season, I will probably not be able to find a real criticism of them. I think this will just be a straight up success.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think sometimes people can listen to, content and misconstrue like being critical or talking about futuristic stuff as like, oh, pessimism, right? And like for me, I said this at the get, like if they make the play-in, that's like my bar. You've met the bar. Now, I wish in year 5 of the rebuild we were further ahead than the 9-8 battle, obviously. But if you make the playoffs, I'm not going to have any expectation that you're going to do much of anything worth watching. But yeah, dude, if I'm critical of the team, it's not so much a criticism. The criticism would be more like of what they didn't do or how they didn't execute certain things in the past. This season specifically, it'd be about like, well, what can they do to build for the future? What do you keep? What do you willing to put on the table? But yeah, they make the playoffs. I'm not going to can them and be like, oh, this season failure. Dude, you took a step. It might not be a huge step, but you took a step into something you haven't done since 2021. Like that matters in this city.
Yeah. And I also think, I would say in terms of year 5 of the rebuild or whatever, I think they're about where I thought they should be based on that. It's the future stuff. It's because Scoot Henderson doesn't look like this star at 3, because I think Shaedon Sharpe had his best season of his career, but I don't feel more comfortable about him being an all-star in the future than I did when the season started. I think but I do think factually he played the best basketball of his life this year. And so like, I think it's more like when you kind of look on the other side of the horizon and you say like, okay, after this season, which will probably end up feeling like a pretty successful one, how do you build? And that's what I want to ask you about in the second segment. Not only do they have a new owner, they've got their franchise icon coming back. They've got the future is, there are a lot of big decisions to make. Let's talk about those big decisions in the third segment. Join us on the other side. First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. The playoff push is heating up. We're a few days away from the end of the regular season and a week left in the play-in to decide the final playoff matchups. And there's no better way to get in on the high-flying action than PrizePicks, America's #1 sports pick app. Every bucket, every assist, every big moment means more when you're building your lineups on PrizePicks. PrizePicks makes it simple to play. It's daily fantasy built around player projections, so you can stay locked in to all the games. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, which makes it quick and easy to jump in. You can mix different sports in the same lineup. So if you don't just want to follow NBA basketball, but baseball season, and as we get into playoff hockey as well, you can do all of that. Plus early features like early payouts let you lock in a win early if your player gets off to a strong start. It's a fun way to stay engaged, especially during the playoff run of this time of the season when things are important, or at least feel more important. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on PrizePicks. Still a pass versus point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, still chatting here with Brandon Spargue, a one-time Clackamas County Youth Basketball Coach of the Month. Let's go! Maybe 2-time. At least one. Two times. You
better recognize 2 times.
Yeah, that's right. Let's go. I mean, listen, once you win it, they kind of get voter fatigue, and they're like, yeah, we can't give it to Sprague again. Damian Lillard's going to come back in the fall. Who knows what he'll be? I'm not going to ask you to predict because how could we know?
Right.
But what is your... Do you, with Damian Lillard back in the fall and Tom Dundon here, Tom Dundon sitting next to LaMarcus Aldridge again in that Spurs game? That was a pretty funny one. And I want to ask you about that in a moment. But do you expect them to take do you expect them to try to take a big swing this summer? What's your your gut level guess? Is this a patient build that they continue, or is this the time that they really swing knowing that you might strike out?
I think okay, I'll give you the answer. My overall difficult part of this is like, could we have worse possible timing to get a new owner and then also pair that with, hey, come in and convince the city to give you hundreds of millions of dollars and figure out a lease agreement? Like if that had been solved as he had bought the team and like he's coming into that deal, then I think it makes things easier. But that being said, like my whole takeaway, and I thought, by the way, you and everybody there, I thought you guys all asked all the right questions. Quick setup on taxes was hilarious, but like I thought everybody overall asked the right questions. So kudos to people that were there. My biggest takeaway, despite the lease stuff and the city money and all that argument that people are going to have, my biggest takeaway is it's happening. Now, I've been burned before. The organization I have noted before in years past, you know, when I used to do a daily pod on this, I'd be like, oh, this is it. And then they would Lucy the football from me, and I'd be Charlie Brown going up in the air, landing on my back. And like eventually I got to a point where when Scoot got drafted, I was done believing it. Like, and I know Denny ended up coming here, but like none of us were acting like that was some huge swing. It was a swing in the sense of like, did they overpay? But that wasn't like earth-shattering NBA news that Denny Avdia got traded from the Wizards to the Blazers. So that was fine, but I just haven't bought it. I buy it. I thought Heiken wrote a great piece, in-depth piece on Dundon and his experience as an owner in hockey, and I know it's a much different category, but my takeaway is like this dude, this is a money-making thing for him, and that can scare people, right? It can be like, oh, guy's a venture capitalist, he doesn't care, he's going to cut a bunch of stuff, raise prices and whatever for us. I think he will do absolutely some of that stuff. I also think winning matters. How do you charge more for tickets every year and get a full arena? You win.
Right.
And so like he might be super in on the day-to-day of are the hamburgers cooked right more so than the personnel, but he's going to care about the results. And so, yeah, I don't know what name that is. I don't know if I buy it's Giannis. I don't know if somebody threw Jalen Williams at me and I was like, oh my God, if the Thunder had to do that, please. But I do think they're going to make a big move. I think they're going to trade multiple picks, a contract to match money. So if that's your classification of a big move, yeah, I would lean yes. I think Tom Dundon wants to win and wants to win now, or at least compete much more next year as his first real owner as a team than what they're currently doing.
Yeah, I'm because so many teams are going to try to be good. I'm having trouble figuring out which. It's not 100% obvious to me which team is in the we would love to get rid of this star player type of mode beyond obviously the Bucks or whatever. But like, I think it's more the getting involved in some other in you know, multi-team deals and if stuff moves around, like certainly, but I think like a lot of teams are going to be competitive next year. If you look at sort of just the cycles that they're in, like the Jazz aren't in the teardown cycle. They're going to try to be better. The Warriors are still in the mix. The Phoenix is still in the mix. Like the only team in the West that I think is like for sure going to be awful is Memphis. But like, I don't think the Blazers, I think the Blazers going to miss it. Right. But they're not going to do it on purpose.
Well, yeah, I mean, but Sacramento always needs to be mentioned of like, they're going to be at the bottom.
Yeah. They're not going to do it on purpose. They're going to have to, they're going to still be employing Zach LaVine or whatever. And like, we'll see. So yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. The only reason I am saying I don't know if they'll make that big trade is because I don't know what would realistically be available, because there seems to be more teams that are interested in competing than maybe in the past, where it's like, hey, maybe Lowry marketing could shake free because the Jazz they're over it, right? So we'll see. Right. Obviously, that stuff changes quickly, right? Like you might not know it in April, but crash outs in the playoffs always inform that type of thing. You know, like some teams are going to get blasted out of the first round and be like, oh, we're not good. Maybe, you know, and then maybe the Orlando Magic say, let's reconfigure some things. And then I maintain that, like, I don't like him for a variety of reasons, but Paolo Banchero seems like the most gettable, like, quote unquote star, right? I think he's the most good. I don't know that I would love that fit on the Portland Trailblazers, but if I had to like pick the like good, quote unquote good player who's like the most gettable, I think it would be like Paolo after the Magic are like, ooh, that's no good. How do we get off this money type of thing? So I think that's a name that I would at least circle.
What? Okay, so you don't like him that much. I totally get why.
Well, I do like that he couldn't solve Brady Manick in college. He could never solve the riddle of Brady Manick in college. And so he lost in both in Coach K's final home game in Durham and in the Final Four because he couldn't solve He could not solve Brady Manick. But yeah, what was your question?
What's I knew you had to get that in there.
Yeah, I did, sorry.
It's okay. Never forget. What's a deal for Paolo Banchero to you that you like think is normal, but you also expect it, but you also think it's an overpay?
Yeah, it's like Shaden, Jeremy, giving Orlando back their first round pick in 2028 and another lightly protected pick or something like that.
Why? Okay, so let me just ask you. I know we're kind of getting hypothetical trades here, but like,
I know, but people think I hate trades. So give me another opportunity to cook up one. That's fake.
Well, I was just trying to think of Orlando's makeup. Like, Orlando's kind of an odd team, right? With or without Paolo Banchero, they're kind of an odd team. And I thought it was an overpay for Desmond Bane, but I also like kind of defended and I defend a lot, but like I was like, oh, Desmond Bane, 5 picks is a lot. But if Desmond Bane hits and Paolo takes a step forward and Franz plays, like,
and it
they
felt
might
like
be all
the
right.
East was wide open this year, and that they were like, okay, that's one of the 3 best teams in the East, and this is exactly what you want small markets to do. Is like when there's a window to compete, go for it. And then it like didn't work out, and you're like, well, they're gonna fire their coach, and now they're gonna and now you feel like they shouldn't have gone for it.
I also I know ownership and this stuff matters too, but like I also do find it interesting that, and I'm just as guilty as anybody, the minute a team underperforms is the minute we in this city instantly go, can you go get this guy? That team had 1 bad year. They're ready to give up on him. Like, we do that all the time. And I just think like post LaMarcus, take 2021, the last time Blazers made the playoffs. They had that incredibly disappointing Nuggets playoff series. Dame has one of the greatest, most efficient games in NBA playoff history. CJ steps out of bounds, and our solution is fire Terry Stotts and bring everything back. And I'm like, all right, but if I was an outside observer, I'd be like, dude, Dame might be gettable. They just lost to the Nuggets in the first round. And I find it interesting that anytime a team disappoints, we think we're going to get the other team's best player, even though we don't have like a real track record of that. Like Paolo Banchero, that's a pretty big move. Giannis Antetokounmpo, massive move. Jalen Williams from the Thunder, for whatever reason they would do that, massive move. Trey Murphy from the Pelicans,
yeah,
good move, not massive, but I think we would sell it as like we took a big swing with this because they're probably going to trade a Shaden and multiple picks involved with that, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And I just wonder, like, I think the real truth is with the Blazers here is like, you need another player who's as good as Denny. If you're going to be competitive, Denny Avdia is that level of guy who can be, who makes you really competitive. But to get into the next realm, they need at least one dude who is as good as him, if not 2, but one dude who's as good as him. Do you feel like, if you make the bigger trades, you're kind of pot committed. If you make a Denny stylish trade where you kind of like quote unquote overpay for a young player, is there a world in which Trey Murphy levels up and he is also a top 25 player in the league? I think that's kind of like, that's maybe the other side of it is, do they still feel like they can sort of hit what appears to be a really solid double that turns into a home run in 8 months after it's completed? I think that would be the sort of hope, is that they don't have to cash all the way in. They don't have to get someone on a super max or a giant contract, and they can still be, and they can still level up and then take those sort of steps forward without cashing everything out. And I wonder what Dundon's appetite is for that. Is he a believer in the sort of like, hey, this guy checks all of our boxes analytically, let's see if he can grow here? Or is he enamored with a bigger swing because of that's how, often it works in the league?
Well, it's funny. I said this on my radio show 2 days ago of like, if they make a trade, are they making a trade and getting a better player than Denny? And I think you kind of you hit the nail on the head there. Like, can you even get a player as good as Denny? Can you get a player as impactful in a game to game as Tumani? Now, Trey Murphy is like that for sure. I don't know if he's going to be as good as Denny. I just went and looked up some of his numbers before ESPN's autoplay hit me in the face live on a podcast. And God, dude, I don't know when that started, but that's so annoying. But you look at Trey Murphy's numbers and you're like, okay, are these good numbers for a bad team? That age old, like good stats, bad team guy thing. Has he performed better on a bad team than you would expect? And how would he perform in this? I mean, I have a lot of questions about next year's group without even a trade happening yet, right? Like, my questions remain on Denny I know he's an all-star caliber player and an all-star player. What's Denny when the ball's not in his hands a ton? When the usage rate drops from 100, which is at now, to 87? What's that difference? How does that look? What's the ball? Where's the ball with Denny on the court, Dame on the court, right? Like how is that going to look? Is Dame off the bench? Like you have enough questions with the group that is, let alone Trey Murphy coming here. Is he going to tap into something? Possibly, but I wouldn't expect it to raise a much higher than it currently is in New Orleans. Like New Orleans is not good, but Derek Queen shoots the ball. Zion Williamson, when he plays, shoots the ball. Jeremiah Fears has been pretty damn good for his rookie year. Like they have guys in New Orleans. We just watched them play. They don't win games, but they got some dudes. And there's stretches where Trey Murphy's playing. I know he impacts defense, but there's stretches on offense where I'm like, oh, Trey Murphy in a shot. There you go. I kind of think that's what it would be here in Portland. And if it's not Trey Murphy, like I just, to your point, I don't know who's going to try to win, who's going to say this was disappointing, we're blowing this up. I don't know what that looks like in this league, man, especially in the West where it's just so top heavy and you've got a lot of teams, Portland, Phoenix, Utah, to what your point on, they traded for Triple J. Like you've got all of these teams jumbled, whether in the playoffs or not, that are all probably going to try to be better. And it's like, are you going to be the team that emerges that gets a player as good as your best player right now? And I think that's the tough conundrum that they're in, is we always assume all these teams are going to ship out their, young star or their star player. And it like largely doesn't work like that in the way the league is set up right now.
Well, isn't the obvious solution here is that Damian Lillard comes back at age 36 after an Achilles injury and is a freaking superstar? Isn't that the solution? Like, that's it. I solved it. Like, that's this. Like, I have no idea, right? Like, I know the dude works hard. I've seen the videos, all that, but it's like I will wait to watch him play basketball in the NBA to figure out what I think he's going to be in the NBA. I'm not going to guess, but like that is in some ways the bet that they made, is that Dame will come back and be like a really additive part at a mid-level money, and that's the way that they sort of snake past it. I have no idea, but I think that's as you've kind of laid out here, the challenges of getting those players, what they even have to trade, all those things, who might be available. Their cleanest path to being really good is having Damian Lillard come back and be something like, I don't know, 2023 Damian Lillard. Like that's the way they could have, that's the way they bump up accelerate the timeline, albeit that it's the window is going to be small because he's 36 years old and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know. I think if there's any simple way to do it, it's have that dude be great.
Yeah. I don't know, like expectations to your point. Like, I don't know what to expect because he's going to be going on 37 next year. And
he turns 36 in July. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will say, I think in football and basketball, what we've seen it feels like year or two, it does feel like the Achilles injury recovery is a lot quicker than it was just 5-6 years ago. And I've watched decent amounts of Boston Celtic games on League Pass when they're not on national TV. And like, I see these moments of Tatum and I'm like, oh, there he is. Yeah. And then I see other games and I'm like, looks a little hampered. And I know Dame's going to be out a little longer, but I wonder, like, are we going to get like a 10-game awesome stretch? There's Dame. He's giving him 24 a game and he's shooting 44% from three. And then are we going to get like an 8-game dive where it's like, the physical toll on a body coming off of recovery and playing in this modern era of basketball, which, say whatever you want about the league, man. Like it's harder. It just is. Like, I know people think elbows to the face and punches to the nose make it harder, but like style of play,
running around is harder than getting elbowed. Sorry, y'all.
Go watch 90s playoff games. The amount of walking up the court and just running sets where you're barely jogging through a screen is just like, no disrespect because I grew up on it, but like it's crazy how quick and fast these teams are moving. That's a lot to ask for at that age off of that injury. So I have decent expectations for Dame to be good for them, but I also I find them a very odd team to build on and around. Like, you're not building around any particular one player, right? Like, you're not building around Denny Avdia. He's not your one. I don't personally think on a title contending team he's a 2. I think he's a really good 3. So, like, how do you build a team without a 1?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's the question, right? That is the what we 5 years into this, the Dundon era, or excuse me, the Cronin era is, I think they've made some good moves, but how you go from here to that next step remains to me still a bit of a mystery.
Well, and also, like, let me add, like, I think the interesting part of their offseason is going to be, my take going into the presser was, and it still is that, like, Dundon changing coaches won't shock me. I don't know. Maybe Tiago's the guy, maybe he's not. I'm not qualified to make that decision. New coach, sure. I tend to believe that, like, Cronin and Hankins are going to be around for one more year. So what does Joe do in an offseason that might be his last? The desperation.
Yeah.
That's what I wonder.
I think this summer is a really fascinating one because, they're all big, right? They're all important, but this one is the level up summer. It's not the continue to rebuild or nail the draft picks. It's the level up summer and leveling up, like going from, taking those first steps, the first 40% of the build is a little bit easier than the last 60%. And then that last 10% is really hard. And we're not even talking about championship. We're talking about a team that, gets home court advantage in the playoffs type of thing. So,
right.
Yeah. I don't have a good answer for you. And I think that's where we'll leave it is, boy, do we have an interesting summer to look forward to. Brandon, where should people look for more of your work?
105.1, 6 to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, as my laptop is dying, so I apologize.
He's on the radio, and he's got to go. Listen, Blazers play the Los Angeles Clippers tonight against in the Moda Center, the biggest game in Portland in 5 years. I'll be there. We'll do a show after the game happens because the Blazers are either going to be in 8th or path to 8th, very clear, or they'll be in 9th after it happens. So come back and join us for that show. Tell your friends about the podcast. I appreciate you listening. I will talk to you soon.